Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ice Cream for PRs podcast. My name is Jeff Nippard, and joining me this week, I've got Doug Miller on the line. If any of you guys aren't familiar with the name Doug Miller, I'll give him a quick introduction here. So Doug is a IFBB drug-free pro bodybuilder. He's a former IFBB Yorton World Cup champion. He's widely considered to be the best natural bodybuilder competing today. He's the owner of supplement company Core Nutritionals and coaching company Team Miller. And Doug is also an academic. So Doug has a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. So it's a real pleasure to have you joining us this week, Doug. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love doing these things.
For sure. So first, I'd like to talk about your most recent competition season, so 2014. Mm-hmm. I definitely think this was the best package you've ever brought to the stage. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of one of those contest preps where everything came together. You know, I was injury-free, which is huge. I just felt good. I got into shape early. You know, I was at a point in my life where I've done the corporate, I don't even want to say 9 to 5. I've done the corporate 7 to 7. And at this point in time, I was able to kind of go on my own and do my own businesses. So I had the flexibility to train when I wanted, eat when I wanted. The stars were really aligned at the time. My son was only, 6 months old, so he wasn't really super active. There wasn't a ton I could do yet with him. He wasn't super active or super high maintenance. So it was just a perfect time really to compete, and that's why I did it. It was just the right time, and things came together really well for me.
Yeah. So do you think you could just do a quick recap of the shows you hit that season?
Yeah, sure. So I did the Cape Cod, the Gaspari Pro. So I won the heavyweight class and the overall on that. That's always a great show. That's one of the best shows. That's one of my favorite shows to do. I've won that 3 times. And then I want to say it was 2 weeks later, I did the Yorton Cup in DC. Again, that was probably the most competitive, difficult show that I've ever done. I was pretty nervous about that show, but it worked out pretty well for me. I won the middleweight class in that, so I was the heaviest middleweight at that show. And then I did a week later. So I did 3 shows in 3 weeks. So a week later, I did the NPC, the Jay Cutler Classic in Baltimore. And so that was one of the things that before I, stepped on stage, I mean, I asked basically people on social media, like, what do you think? Should I do this show? I had mixed feelings at the time. I mean, going from doing an IFBB show to an NPC show, it was a big deal to me because, basically, that show is not drug tested. All the shows I've ever done have been drug tested. That was a non-drug tested show. And, I really wanted to do it to kind of represent, the natty aspect of this, and it can be done naturally. And so I think overwhelmingly it was, 99-1 that I should do the show. So I won the light heavyweight class in that show and the overall.
Right. Just out of curiosity, like you've obviously been successful on untested stages. How well do you think you could do in that stream? Like I've heard guys say that you could probably do well in like the 212 class in the IFBB. Have you ever considered that or?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I don't want to be a professional bodybuilder, right? I mean, that's not what I want to do. I mean, I guess you could call me a professional Okay, let me put it differently. I don't want to be a professional competitive bodybuilder, right? Like I don't have to put on my Speedo and step on stage to be a bodybuilder, right? Like I can, live the lifestyle and train and diet because I love to do it. But once you get to the IFBB and you start, competing so often and stuff like that, I don't know. It loses its luster to me, Could I do well? I don't know. I mean, I had a lot of people in 2014, after I won the Jay Cutler Classic, I had a lot of the NPC coaches say, you need to hold out and do nationals a week later or 2 weeks later. You have a good shot of winning the light heavyweight class. I don't buy that. I don't think so. I mean, those guys are, I'm 5'9", and I squeaked in at the top of the light heavyweight class, but there's guys that are 5'4", in the light heavyweight class. And, it's not really necessarily one of my aspirations. To say it's not a goal would be kind of a lie because, at some point in time, maybe I'd want to do the Team Universe and try to shoot to get a IFBB pro card naturally. But if that never happens, if I never step on stage or I never win that's totally fine with me. That's really not why I'm in this. I don't know. It's hard to compete with guys that are on a ton of stuff. So I think I could be somewhat competitive in the light heavyweight class at most NPC shows. But competing with the big boys in the 212, that would be, I don't know. We'd have to see.
Yeah. So would you ever consider switching to the dark side then? I mean, like, I'm assuming the answer would be no if it isn't a real, true goal of yours. But if you did, I mean, like, it would probably be ridiculous. I mean, a lot of people think that you have the genetics and the potential to go as far as you want with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm 36 years old now, right? So, I mean, most people actually think I'm a little bit younger than that, but I'm 36 years old. So it's like, if I was going to do it, if I was going to go on the juice, I would have done it by now,
right.
And, in my early 20s, did I think about it? Sure. I think any natural bodybuilder would really lie to say that they haven't thought about it at some point in time, but it was just a fleeting moment, wow, I wonder how big I could get. And then you think about all the reasons why you're not doing it. And that has really been, kind of the path that I've stayed. I mean, and I've built multiple brands on being natural. So at this point in time, I'm going to be way more successful in those brands staying natural than I ever would be on an IFBB stage. Yeah. So the opportunities there are just, it doesn't make sense, not to mention it definitely shortens your life. So, that's not something that I would really ever entertain at this point.
Right. So like you said that, like you don't really want to be like a pro bodybuilder, like for that to like just kind of be your thing. But like obviously you are, and like it takes a lot to compete as a pro, like as a natural pro or whatever. So like, what is it then that motivates you to be the best or to be your best in bodybuilding?
I'm just super competitive. I don't know what it is. From the time that I was a little kid, I remember running races at school, and like it would piss me off if somebody would beat me.
Yeah.
And so, it just goes back to that. It's like I always wanted to be top of the class, top of the first in the race, the best physical fitness assessment test in gym class. I don't know what it was. It's just a part of it. And that's probably my biggest genetic. I guess it's a good thing. There's definitely a downside to that. I'm extremely hard on myself. It's hard on people around me because I am so hard on myself. It's just kind of that innate drive to be the best at what I do. I mean, it's not really just the bodybuilding stage, but it definitely carried over into that. But like academically and everything else, when I start something, like I want to finish it. I want to do it right, and I want to be, to be the best that I personally can be. Right. So really, it's just kind of this innate drive that I have.
Yeah. So what would you say to people who don't believe in your natural status? Like a lot of people, especially online, just aren't buying it. Like you must hear that quite a lot. Like, does that offend you, or does it push you, or is it just like, I don't care?
No, I mean, some of the things that offend me are some of the things that just are just so absurd and are just flat out like lies. Like you actually know who I am. It's just like some of the things are so stupid. I mean, they're personal. Like, I don't know. I take some of that stuff personally. I'm human. I do. But for the most part, I would say 99% of the trolls out there, it's kind of funny. At this point in time, pretty much everything just rolls off me. Like I've heard everything. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the YouTube videos out there of people like, Blaha?
Yeah.
I mean, like I watched that. Like I watched it with some of my employees and stuff, and we are like dying laughing.
Yeah,
like,
it is funny.
I mean, it's pretty funny. Like he's drawing like, connecting points from like my shoulder to my nipple, and then it's like the Illuminati.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clever actually. I mean, but honestly, it just goes to show that people really don't know what it takes to be, to reach, to go push their natural potential pretty far. I mean, I think it's my intensity, my ability to push past that point of pain. with the good pain, and the training, the nonstop, the consistency, the grind, that type of thing. Most people don't want to do that, and they don't realize what it takes to get there. And so it's kind of sad when they look at certain physiques and they say it's not attainable naturally, because it is. I mean, like there's nothing I can say or do. Like I posted urine tests 2 weeks apart at the Yorton and the Cape Cod, and I knew that was going to cause a stir, right? Like I knew that was not going to be good enough for anybody who doubted me in the first place. But there's nothing I can do. Like I could get drug tested, I could get blood tested every week leading up to a competition, hair follicle test, everything, and there'd be something that I could potentially do that wouldn't be good enough to appease those haters. So it really doesn't bother me at this point. And some of it is a bit of a compliment. It is kind of a shame that they can't realize that this can be done naturally. Right. Because honestly, I look at my physique and there's so much I can improve. There's I see so many weaknesses, and I don't know.
Like what? Just out of curiosity, like what would you say needs to improve for next time?
I think just overall, I think calves can come up. I mean, I have good calves. They're always very lean and cut, but I think my calves can be bigger. I think my forearms can be bigger. I think my traps can be bigger. My chest can be bigger. I think my strong parts, I think my lats can be wider. I think my strong parts are, my lats are a pretty strong part. My hamstrings are a strong part. I don't think anybody can ever have too much quad. So I mean, I pretty much have named every body part. I was happy with my shoulders last show. My upper arms have always been a strong point for me. But yeah, I mean, just the basics, I don't structurally have the best genetics in the world. I'm not saying I have bad genetics, but I'm not like one of those guys with a 27-inch waist, that could never lift a weight in their life and be jacked. That's not me. Yeah. So there's always improvements that I can make. And at this point in time, if I ever step on stage again, I might not be any heavier, any bigger than I was before. It's just the refinement of the physique at this point.
Right. Yeah. I think you're an example of a guy who really has progressed, or it seemed to be like a steady progression throughout your career. So when you first started, you clearly had a lot of size, but it's just gotten better and better and better with each season. What do you attribute that to? Because I feel like a lot of the top natural guys especially end up hitting a point and then they just kind of stagnate, like they've reached their natty limit or whatever. Do you believe that exists, or do you think you can always improve as a natural?
I'd like to believe it doesn't exist, because if I believe it exists, then that demotivates, right? Yeah. I honestly believe that at 36, I can still, in the next, 5-7 years, I can be better than I was when I competed last time at 35. I really do believe that. There's a point in time where life and age take over, and that's not the case. And that will be fine. I'll be fine with that. But I really think that it's the consistency. Literally, I live this. I mean, this is what I do. I love to train. I'm training 2 hours every day. If I don't train, I just feel like what am I doing, right? I just love to train, and I think, I don't know. I think it's just the consistency. I mean, I've been doing this now for 18 years, and I have logbooks that could, if I stacked them, would be probably 6 feet tall, of those little fat books. I've logged every workout that I've done for 18 years, and it's that consistency, and I think some people get complacent, and I've been blessed, knock on wood, that I haven't had any major, injuries that have put me out for 6 months. I'm fighting a pretty bad knee issue right now that it sucks. I haven't really been able to hit quads like I wanted to for the past, 5 weeks, and that sucks, but it's part of the game. It's that happens, but you just got to learn to kind of train around it. It doesn't mean I'm not going there and trying to train legs and at some point doing something that doesn't hurt. So I've been pretty good about that, staying relatively healthy and learning to train around and, major injuries.
Right. So I'd like to actually talk about your training a little bit. I don't know how much training actually changes for you, but how about we just talk about what you're doing now, or maybe what you were doing for your last competition season. So from what I've seen, it seems like a lot of your training volume comes in higher rep ranges, so 15 to 20 reps, Would you say that that's where the majority of your work is done? And do you ever do lower rep work, like say 10 to 15 or 5 to 10?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, last night we trained legs, and so it was a little bit of a different training because I have some knee issues, but I think we counted up the reps, and it was 930 reps yesterday for legs. And that's not like lightweight. I mean, that's all compound movements. We had 2 exercises in there that were 10 sets of 30. There was a 10 set of 30, 10 sets of 20. There was another, and then there was 2 other exercises which were like 5 sets of 20. And that's just kind of the way I train. I've always trained that way. My back and my legs, which are 2 of my stronger body parts. It's kind of funny. I don't train in your traditional hypertrophy range of like 6 to 12. Literally pretty much everything is like 20 reps. Obviously for back, and like if I'm heavy squatting and stuff like that, that rep range goes down. But really, I'm a big believer of going heavy weight and like higher rep. So I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but really pushing to failure at that higher rep range. Like most people will do 20 reps, but they probably could have done 40 reps with that weight. I'm doing 20 reps where maybe I really could have only got 18, but I'll push out 20. I mean, those types of sets, I think, are the sets that really they're the money makers, right? They're the ones that make a man out of you. That they probably elicit more, hormonal response in your body than other sets, And so I've just found that has worked well for me, and I enjoy training that way. And not to sound silly here, but like if I'm training back, I pretty much can do the stack on every machine for 20 reps, right? So it's pretty hard to train low rep. Now I could slow down my cadence and do really slow, but that gets boring after a while, right? Like, but I do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll lighten the weight a little bit, and just do a full rep will take me 5 or 6 seconds. That type of training. But yeah, for the most part, I'm definitely over 10 reps. Legs and back, I'm usually in the 20 rep range. Now, when I'm doing deadlifts, I'll go down to 4 rep sets, stuff like that. When I'm doing heavy rows, I'll do probably my lowest rep range on rows is like about 8. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in higher reps.
Yeah, that's interesting because like a lot of the most recent research kind of negates that old theory that like you had to be in like 6 to 12 reps in order to build muscle. It's kind of like provided that it's taken to failure, you're going to activate all the motor units anyway. And so like they see similar results between like 7 sets of 3 and 3 sets of 10, and even like 20 to 30 rep sets, they still see like similar amounts of growth. So it's kind of like you can train in those upper rep ranges and still build muscle as long as you're pushing it, like you said. I think the problem is that like most people are like, yeah, I'm getting a good pump, and then they still leave like 10 or 20 reps in the tank. And so that's when I think you run into problems with the higher rep ranges.
I mean, I love training. I like the higher volume. I mean, it's fun to train. I've trained or worked out with people that are doing like more of a powerlifting approach, and I mean, if they're competing in a powerlifting meet, that's great. Whatever. That's the way they should train.
Yeah.
But like to do a set of like 2 reps that wasn't even to failure, and then kind of walk around for 5 minutes, and then do another set. It's just like I get it, but it's just like that's boring as crap. It's just like I don't have time for that. Like I don't have time to spend. It would take me 6 hours to get through a workout.
Yeah. No, I
so I'm a big believer in just volume. Just moving heavy weight for a lot of reps. I mean, I try not to overthink things. And for the most part, that's how I train my clients. The first time I'll put a client on a higher volume program, they're pretty toast. Like they're like they can't walk for days, days. But like they adapt, and I find that they get more. They make quicker gains that way than any other type of training that I've tried with them, and I find that they get like a leaner, denser look to them with a higher volume, type approach. I can't really explain it, but I definitely find that your muscles just seem to mature faster. You know how mature muscle definitely looks a little different.
Oh yeah.
I find that the really high volume training, helps, expedite that.
Yeah. One of the questions I would have is like, how do you like you've progressed so steadily and consistently across your career, at least it seemed that way. Like how do you, with that style of training, how do you ensure that you're progressing? Like I mean, I know you track everything, so you just do, I guess.
I track everything, I mean, I really do. And I don't, for myself, I know it's different for my clients because I'm actually giving them a program. For myself, I don't even know what I'm going to do when I go into the gym that day, really. For the most, that's maybe not true, but like I know what body part I'm going to train, and then I get there and I kind of see how I feel, right? Like if I'm not feeling deadlifts, my back's not feeling right, I won't do them. And so, I really mix things up. I mean, my no two workouts are ever the same. And so there's a ton of variety in there. And so when I'm logging stuff, I make sure to kind of beat what I've done or attempt to beat what I've done previously. But I understand, like if I'm looking at hack squats and I did them first versus third, obviously I know there's going to be a difference. Mm-hmm. So I track everything so that I try to look apples to apples. So then I would compare my hack squats doing them third on another day and that type of thing. And I realize, at this point in time, you're not going to be setting a PR every day, really. Now that, like I said, recently I've had a lot of aches and pains. And so getting through a workout without having, aches and pains and getting a really good pump, that's a win for me right now.
Yeah.
So, I just, I don't know, being consistent, really mixing it up, never doing the same program, never getting stuck in a rut. I do tend to fall back to some certain splits that I really enjoy training, but my workouts are so varied that, there's just a ton of different stimulus there. So,
can you give me an example of like what your favorite split would be?
I mean, my favorite split is old school bro split, one body part a day. I love it. It's just the way I love training. I love going in there and not worrying about having to hit like 3 body parts,
right, and
just destroying whatever body part I'm working. Yeah. And usually I'm sore for a while, so it takes a while to recover. And I mean, and you hit so many, right now. I mean, I am doing that split. I'm doing quads and calves Monday. Today I'll do chest. Tomorrow's back. Thursday's arms. Friday's hamstrings and calves, and Saturday will be shoulders, and then I take Sunday off. There's a lot of research that'll say, hitting multi-body parts, hitting a body part multiple times in a week, is ideal for hypertrophy. But to be honest with you, I've done that, and I do that. It's just I like training this way, and so I'll mix it up completely, but this is a really fun way for me to train.
Yeah.
And so, especially, it's actually really easy when I'm traveling. I've been doing a ton of traveling within the past year, and it's just easy to travel that way. Yeah. It's easy to sync up with people that I'm traveling with, so that we can train together and stuff like that. So
yeah. No, I actually have been doing the same thing myself for the last little while, and you're absolutely right. It is just a really enjoyable way to train, and I find like when you enjoy your training sessions, you just tend to push yourself that much harder, and be that much more consistent with it. And so, I absolutely would agree there. And like a lot of the argument for the higher frequency training is that it allows you to squeeze in more volume in the training week. But if you're doing like double the volume that most people are doing in a given session anyway, then there might not be a benefit to splitting it up more, especially if you don't enjoy it as much. So I think that's interesting. Yeah. So Doug, do you periodize your training at all? Like, do you have periods of lighter weeks or deload weeks, or say blocks where you're like focused specifically on strength or a specific body part or something like that?
So yes, but it's not. It's more like instinctual periodization, right? So you just can't slam 100% of the time, right? You just can't do it. So for me, it's if I'm feeling good, I'm not gonna take like if it's a week, like if I would have that and it's a week where if I had planned into my program a week of okay, I'm gonna deload this week, but I felt amazing and I wanted to train, like I'm gonna train. I'm not gonna be able to deload. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. So I don't do that. I don't plan deloads. I think there's definitely some benefits of it, but I'll use things like if I'm traveling a day, I need an extra day of rest, or we go on vacation a couple days here and there, that type of thing. I'll use that as rest. But for the most part, my periodization is terms of it really comes down to, I think the best way I could describe the way I do it is exercise selection and kind of rep speed and things like that. So for example, if I'm always hitting deadlifts and barbell rows and all the heavy compound exercises, squats and stuff like that, if I'm feeling a little bit off and I feel like I need to back off a little bit, I'll still keep the intensity relatively high, but I'll definitely focus on more machines. And I'll slow down the tempo to get really focus on that blood flow, that squeeze. And that way I feel like it's giving my joints a little bit of a rest. And it's just a different way of training. And so that's really kind of how I periodize, my training. But to actually have a deload week, a set deload week, I don't do it.
And then like training to failure. So like, do you take every set to failure or like just the last set to failure, or how do you manage that?
I try not to.
Yeah.
But I always feel like I can get one more rep. Yeah. So it's hard for me to stop. Yeah. I actually, when I first started training, I did everything wrong that everyone else does, before they know better. So like, you're training with your bros and like you're doing a bench press and like, come on, man, you got it. And like they're basically upright rowing, the last 3 reps, right? Yeah. It does nothing. Yeah. And so I don't do that. I don't do forced reps. I really don't do any forced reps of any kind. I would, maybe need a spot if, I happen to fail on the last rep, but I don't ever do forced reps. That's a big thing. Once I stopped doing forced reps, I grew way quicker. So that was a big thing. So I don't really do force reps. I try to leave a little bit in the tank, but I'm doing that with multiple sets and, pretty heavy, a lot of volume. So I feel like generally I'm pretty much training to failure. Like at the end of the day, when I walk out of the gym, I'm pretty much spent, but I try not to bring any one set to complete all out failure. Although I'll be honest with you, a lot of times I'll do that because it's the way I am, right? Like if it's hard for me to stop 1 rep short, but I really feel like there is a benefit of leaving just a little bit in the tank. Yeah. It helps. I think it helps prevent injury. I think when you're really pushing that last 1 rep is where everyone gets hurt, right? Yeah. So to do that, to kind of leave a little bit in there, I think there are some benefits to that. But to be honest, that's hard for me sometimes.
So what do you think of the argument that like if you leave a rep in the tank, you'll be able to do more overall volume because like the subsequent sets won't suffer as much because you won't be so fatigued? Like, do you find that to be the case? Like, say you take your first set or your second set to failure, then on your third, and say it's like 20 reps to failure, your third set you might only get like 16 reps, and then your fourth set you might only get like 12.
I definitely, that's definitely the case. So I really feel that, just thinking about how I train, I don't know if I even really do this consciously. I would probably say I'm taking 2 sets of each exercise close to failure. So like if I'm going to do, I'm going to train chest today, and if I'm going to go do dumbbells, right? Like I'll do the 50s for a set of 20. I'll do the 70s for a set of 10. I'll do the 90s for a set of 10. I'll do the 110s for a set of 10. I'll do the 130s for a set of 10. Now it's getting kind of heavy, right? Maybe I'll do the 140s and this is like a set that I would take close to failure. I'll do the 140s for like 8. And then I'll do the 150s and I'll try to get, I don't know, 5, I don't know, whatever I get. Yeah. But so really, it's really those last 2 sets would be the ones. And then maybe I throw a drop set in at the end. It's those last 2 sets are the ones that are taken to failure. So yeah, absolutely. But I think there is some benefit to doing that. I find later in my workout, usually in the beginning of my workout, I really want to, on those major compound lifts, I wanted to take as much time in between sets and not totally, spend myself on quote unquote warm up sets to really kind of push, the heaviest weight for as many reps as possible. So I do a nice progressive warm up, and then maybe I'll crush 2 sets, right? And then as I move through my workout, I'm a little less concerned about that, right? Because it's a little harder to kind of check your logbook and stuff like that. So I am pushing a lot, kind of more sets to failure. I'm already warm, and I'm not really worried about kind of, spending myself for, a top end set.
Right. Okay. I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk to you about with training. Maybe we can move on to nutrition and touch on that for a little bit here.
Sure.
So what do your off-season macros look like, or do you even track in the off-season?
Don't even track.
No? Okay, all right.
I mean, I know what they are. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm probably eating, I can guesstimate. I'm probably eating 32 to 3,500 calories a day.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. When I was younger, my off-season calories were probably more along the lines of 3,800. I would say 33, 34, something like that, maybe even a little bit less. I don't really worry about it. My protein is probably right around 300, maybe a little bit less. Fat is probably around 80, and then fill in the rest with carbs. I'm not, when I'm dieting for a show, I'm super strict. I'm hitting my macros on point. I think the lowest my macros got down to last prep were probably like 2,200 my calories were like 2,200 calories. And then I was able to reverse diet into the show. So by the time I was competing, they were at like 2,600, something like that.
Right.
But yeah, right now I go by feel. I know what I need to eat. I've been doing this long enough.
Yeah.
I don't get caught up in macros.
Right. So is your goal to gain weight now, or are you kind of just trying to like maintain a certain body composition?
That's a good question. I've kind of been, ever since the last show, I haven't really been too concerned about it. Literally, like I'll step on the scale once every 4 months. Like I just don't care.
Yeah.
I just love training. I love eating healthy. Right now I'm probably gonna push the macros a little bit, and try to put on a little bit more size. I'm probably 212 to 215 in the morning, probably maybe let's say 215 in the morning. I'd like to probably maybe put on 5 pounds. But we'll see. I like to do it slow and lean, and I go by the mirror and how I feel a lot more than I do the scale. So if I'm feeling like I'm getting a little softer, I'll tighten it up a little bit. If I feel really lean, then I'll add more calories in. I kind of just go by feel.
Right.
At this point, I'm not really concerned with my body weight as much as I am really is my performance in the gym.
So like in terms of your daily eating, like do you kind of eat like a normal person with like discrete meals, or do you do the like 6 meals a day, or
Yeah, I definitely do 6 or 7 meals a day. Yeah. So, this morning I had protein and waffles. It's
pancake day today.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I had waffles. Yeah. I got a Belgian waffle maker for Christmas, so I've been killing waffles like every day. They're awesome. And so, I did that, and then I'll probably, as soon as we get off here, I'll probably have, 6 ounces of meat, a cup of rice, and, a cup of vegetables, something like that. Then I'll probably do a pre-workout meal my pre-workout meal is a big meal for me. I usually do like 100 grams of carbs in my pre-workout meal. I'm a big fan. I cook a cup of oatmeal, and I'll do 3 scoops of MRP in there, core MRP, with some blueberries and some fat-free Cool Whip. It's like a bowl. It's like It's a man bowl. It's pretty awesome. It's probably like 50 protein, 100 carbs, and then I like to wait a long time. Obviously, after eating a meal that big, you're going to wait a long time anyways. I like letting the food digest, so I'll train 2 hours after that. I'll do a post-workout shake immediately after training, which is about 45 protein, 65 carb. And then I'll do another meal, of kind of like, meat, rice, and vegetables. And then, depending on what my day is like, I'll maybe squeeze in one more meal before I have my bedtime meal, which is usually a couple scoops of protein, some peanut butter, some blueberries, stuff like that. So I'm pretty consistent. That's pretty much my routine, my schedule.
Right. So like, what do you make of people who are like, who would accuse you of being like, oh, that's really bro, or like, that's not science-based or anything like that? Are you just like, that doesn't bother me at all?
How do you look on stage, buddy?
Yeah.
I really could care less what you eat. I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
It's bro, but like honestly, so like within the past 4 days, I've been to a steakhouse, and Sunday night I ate sushi, And, like I'll go out to eat when I want to go out to eat. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't, I don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
I'll just maybe combine a couple meals. I'll miss a meal that day and eat a bigger meal out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not bro. I just love bro foods, really,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, whether you're bro or you're not bro, it all comes down to calories in versus calories out and macronutrients.
Yeah.
So, I just choose to hit my macros using bro foods.
Hmm.
And I'm not one of those people that is going to sit there and, when I'm on contest prep with my fitness pal trying to squeeze in, how many scoops of fat-free frozen yogurt can I have tonight? Like that's not.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
No, I understand.
It's just not what I do. I'd rather eat more volume of kind of healthy foods, and I feel like I just feel and perform better that way.
Yeah.
I'm a bro at heart, though, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it too is like if that's the style of eating that you enjoy or like the style of training that you enjoy, then that's what's going to make you to be most consistent over time.
Yeah.
And like like you said, if it improves your training performance in the gym, then like why wouldn't you do it? Especially if that's how you like to eat anyway. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's all about consistency, like you said.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we touched on kind of like intuitive eating. So I'm assuming you kind of do practice that, but it more so seems to be like you just have like habits, like every day you just kind of tend to.
Yeah, I
eat
mean,
the same sort of thing.
I have pretty much meal. I guess it's kind of like a meal plan that I follow, but I don't. I would say maybe 3 or 4 days a week I'm hitting that spot on. The other days, I'm traveling or going out to eat with my wife and kid or something like that. So it gets off. So I just don't worry about it.
Right. So Doug, I'd like to talk about your supplements for a little bit. So I've seen in a video like you seem to take a lot of supplements, or at least more than I do, or a lot of natural guys do.
Yeah. What are you trying to say, man? What are you trying to say? Am I not natural?
So like you often hear things like people will say, supplements make up like nothing or like less than 5% of your success. Do you think that, I guess what I'm asking is like, do you think that the stuff that you're taking makes enough of a difference for it to be worth it?
I wouldn't do it if I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that. And at the end of the day, people need to realize they are supplements. And I own a number of retail stores, and one of the things that I teach my managers to always teach customers is that you can take whatever you want in here, but it's not going to get results if your diet and your training aren't on point. Like that's the truth. And so I feel that my diet and training are pretty on point, and I feel that the supplements do make a difference. Like they really do. I don't know, some people might just dabble in supplements and some people might be consistent with it, but, I know everybody that I've kind of shown them the way, shown them a number of things to take, how to do meal timing, how to do supplement timing. They notice a huge difference. I mean, like just a huge difference in energy recovery. It's hard to claim muscle growth because you don't really know what percentage that is, but I really do feel that there's a difference, especially on contest prep.
Mm.
Like I felt phenomenal, 5 weeks out. Now, my energy levels at some points were pretty low, but for being as lean as I was, I mean, my strength was phenomenal. I was still deadlifting 6 plates at like 2 weeks out, something like that, which, yeah, I mean, I felt phenomenal. And I think a lot of it had to do with the right supplements, the right timing. So I really do believe it makes a difference, and there's going to be a lot of people that don't believe that and call bullshit and just, thinking that I just want to sell product. But, I really love what I do and I love, designing products and I love the science behind it. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't, really think there was some benefit to it. Like there'd be no like, I wouldn't get joy out of that, right? And I don't want to be doing something that I don't really enjoy. So, like, I truly believe that the supplements that we're putting out really do make a difference.
Mm. So, like, can you give me an example? Because, like, I'm a very minimalistic supplement kind of guy. Like, I take creatine, caffeine, a multivitamin, and some fish oil, basically.
Sure.
So, like, what do you think would be missing from that stack that I might benefit from? Say in a pre-contest phase.
So creatine is really important. I mean, obviously that's a big difference. And I take creatine, all the way through a show, most people say, oh, you got to drop it. It's water retention. If you're taking a good creatine monohydrate, it's going to help you retain water within a muscle cell, not under your skin. I think branched chain amino acid products absolutely makes a difference. I'm a huge fan. I mean, that's what I've been drinking this whole interview. I'm a huge fan of BCAAs and the science behind them. I'm a huge fan of beta-alanine. I think beta-alanine, the study is showing its ability to buffer lactic acid, make a huge difference in endurance. So I think those two things. Really, there's a lot of. I mean, it depends on where you are, kind of like in your phase of training. But I am a big believer in, and I love playing around with different herbs and natural test boosters. And it's not gonna be like taking a steroid, but it's gonna help your body optimize its own endogenous levels of hormone. And we've done blood work on people taking test boosters, and or at least our test boosters, and we've shown true differences. We've shown increases in it. So let me just take Core Alpha, for example, right? So Core Alpha, we've done blood work with people. We've done an 8-week cycle on people. And when they are in their lower end of the test range to begin, so let's say they're pretty low. They're like 280, 300, 350, something like that. We've shown multiple times that they've increased tests over 100%. So they're back up into the normal range, the 500-600 level, right? We find also that it's effective in people that have a normal test range. They're in the 500-600 range. We've also shown that it increases test, more along the lines of 25 to 30% at that point. So there's even some benefit there. Now, how that's going to translate into true muscle growth, I don't think anyone could say, but I know people say, anecdotally, that they feel way better. When you feel better, just things are going to click better. Your training is going to be better. Your intensity is going to be better. Your sleep is going to be better. And all of that goes to kind of the big picture of making gains. And so I'm a big believer in that. And we have another new test booster coming out. It's called Core Test. It's going to be a powder version that I'm super excited about. And so, I'm a big fan of natural test boosters and natural anabolics. You just got to know you got to be careful what you're taking, because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there that'll make ridiculous claims. You got to make sure things are properly dosed. There's some really good herbs and things like that out there that do work when properly dosed, but a lot of companies, because they're expensive, they cost so much per kilo, they'll just sprinkle them into a product, right? So, they'll say it's in a product, and then you're taking something that does absolutely nothing. So I understand why there is some skepticism in the industry, but that's what we're trying to do at Core Nutritionals, is take that away, right? We're trying to be fully transparent, show you guys exactly what you'll be getting, and the doses are properly dosed to get the results from the studies shown on those ingredients. So there's a lot of things you can take. I mean, I think in your stack, I think acetyl-L-carnitine is beneficial when cutting. I think a good fish oil in there is really important. I think probiotics and digestive enzymes help a lot, especially with people that are kind of gassy from all the protein and different things. They might not handle lactose well. So all those little things help to basically be able to eat more food, eat different things, and then eventually lead to gains if everything else is happening, going on properly, like the diet and the training. I know that was a long-winded answer, but man, we could get you on so many different things that it would change your world, man. We'd take you to a whole new level.
So the test booster, what is the main active ingredient in that? Like, is it D-aspartic acid? Because I've taken that before.
In alpha, it's N-methyl D-aspartic acid. Okay. So the N-methyl D-aspartic acid has been shown to bind the N-methyl D-aspartic acid receptors at 100 times the strength. So you don't have to take as much to elicit the same response. It's also got 3-desoxy-7-keto-DHEA, which is banned by WADA. So if anyone's is drug tested by WADA, they can't take it. It's basically it's a metabolite of 7-keto-DHEA. It's non-anabolic. It doesn't affect test levels directly. Like it's not going to change. Let me change that. It doesn't affect T to E ratios, so test to epi test ratios. It doesn't turn into another
steroid in your body that's going to cause a false drug test. So it has no effect on urine tests or anything like that. It's an herb that basically acts as an anti-estrogen, right? So it's going to help lower your estrogen, which is then in turn going to help increase testosterone. There's coleus forskolin, which is good at boosting luteinizing hormone, which then can stimulate testes for more testosterone production. There's what else is in there? There's L-Dopa, which comes from mucuna, and that basically helps increase dopamine in the brain and has been shown to increase natural growth hormone levels. What else is in there? Vitamin D, because higher vitamin D levels are correlated with higher test levels. There's also some zinc in there for testosterone support. So, it's really a full, there's also Brassioopsis, which is another herbal anti-estrogen. So there's, basically it's a test booster that is targeting multiple pathways to increase test. So you can, increase your luteinizing hormone. You can directly do it through N-methyldeaspartic acid. You can lower your estrogen levels to help your body, increase its production of testosterone. So there's a lot of different, pathways through which it works.
Interesting. I guess like there's obviously been research to show that some of the supplements you've named aren't necessary or haven't led to significant increases in muscle mass when they've been tested.
I don't think anything is necessary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, like, give it to someone for 12 weeks and there's no difference in muscle mass, or at least inconsistent results across different studies.
So, like, give me an example of one of the things that I mentioned.
Okay. So, like BCAAs. So, as long as protein is adequate, people will say BCAAs doesn't increase muscle anabolism or increase muscle.
I don't know. I mean, so there's a lot of studies on BCAAs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of studies. I mean, even there's a lot of meta studies on BCAAs, right? Yeah. So, overwhelmingly, I would say that the large majority show that there is some benefit to taking BCAAs, right? So you're always going to have a study on anything, right? I mean, it's the same with like artificial sweeteners, right? You're always going to have studies. For every study showing that, aspartame causes cancer in rats, right? There's another study showing it's completely safe. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a lot of this comes down, for me personally, as a consumer of supplements first and foremost, a lot of it comes down to how do I feel when I take it, right? And so for a BCAA product, it's not something you feel right away. But I know personally there was a period of time where I never took BCAAs. My first BCAA I ever took was like Extend, back in the day. And after I started supplementing with it, I noticed a difference in recovery. How can I, there's not much I can argue with in terms of how I feel. And it was the same thing that I said with like the test boosters, right? Like, so your test increases 20%. Like, there's probably gotta be a study somewhere showing that is not going to translate to too much muscle growth. But it's the overall it's the full package, right? It's how are you feeling? That 20% test, if you're in the dumps and you double your test levels, you're going to feel way better. Your training's going to be way better. Your sleep's going to be way better. Your sex life's going to be way better. And all of those things can contribute to better performance in the gym, which is going to lead to more growth. So a lot of it comes down to, I'm a big believer in science, but I'm also a big believer in how do you feel when you're taking something, right? Like, just because science says something works, if you're using it and it doesn't work for you, or you don't notice a difference, then why take it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the same thing. That's the same thing with my training. That's the same thing with my diet, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the studies, but I think a lot of people these days get too tied down to, I read that BCAAs don't do anything. Really what you want to do is, spike your leucine every couple hours because, you get a better response from that type of thing. Yeah, there's studies that show that. There's also studies that show other things. And so it's, at the end of the day, is what is it going to work for you and what do I find that works well for other people? That's what I'm thinking about when I'm designing supplements. Yeah. Obviously there's a ton of science behind it. Like, if you look at the write-ups, on our Core Nutritionals website, every ingredient gets its own write-up in every product with, all the references. So there's a lot of science there. But as you pointed out, yeah, there's definitely, conflicting information out there on certain ingredients. So, I basically recommend to people what I have found works well for myself and what I've seen work well in other people.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one issue with nutrition and training research is that there is a lot of inter-individual variability. So one person might respond really, really well to something. Someone else might not respond so well.
Yeah.
But when you flatten that out across, 20 or 50 subjects or something, then the results might not be significant statistically, but there might be some people who respond better than others, I suppose. And with BCAAs, I guess I think that having adequate protein is a big X factor there. So
Sure.
I think a lot of the studies that show it to be effective have subjects that are on lower protein intakes. But of course, it's impossible to argue with
Yeah, so let me put it this way. I mean, and I guess a lot of it comes down to budget as well. It's what is your budget for supplements, right?
Yeah.
If you have the budget for it and maybe it's gonna make a percentage or two difference. For me, it's worth it, right? Some people might find that this is what I always explain to people, a lot of 25-year-olds that will come into our retail stores. Man, supplements are expensive. Yet, they were just at the club last night and they dropped $250 on $16 martinis and stupid stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's duh. I mean, dude, you could have 8 weeks of gains right there, man. It's just you got to figure out where what your budget is and what is important to you.
Yeah.
And then figure out what you want to take from there. So. I don't know if something's going to give me even a 2% advantage over somebody else, or by not taking it, I'm going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how about we quickly move on to a couple business stuff, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So, Doug, as I understand it, you own 4 separate businesses. Is that right, or something like that? Maybe it's more.
Really, it's 7. So we have. So it's hard to say. I mean, really, it comes down to 3, right? So there's Core Nutritionals, there's the Nutrition Corners, and then there's Team Miller. So the Nutrition Corners, they're all just technically set up as separate businesses. So we just opened our 4th location, and we have our 5th location opening in Williamsburg, Virginia, in about 2.5 months coming up. So we'll have 5 Nutrition Corners as of April something, in addition to Core Nutritionals and the Team Miller.
Right. So how do you manage all that with the training you do, and then you also have a family? Do you find that your sleep suffers as a result of that? Or do you...
I mean, recently we've experienced a lot of growth within the past 2 years. And I would say yes. My sleep in the past year has been less. Especially with travel, than would be optimal for me. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, balance is a really tough thing. People say, you got to have a good balance, but if you want to be really successful at something, it's hard to have a real balance, right? You look at anybody who is super successful at anything, and there really isn't too much balance there, and I try to do the best I can, and it's hard. It's not easy, The nice thing is I have the flexibility. I'm in my home office right now, right? And so I have the flexibility to hang out with my kid every day. And it's in between meetings. I work pretty much the entire day from sun up to sundown, but I have breaks in there. I can go to the gym and train. I can go to eat dinner with Jackson and Steph. I can hang out and play with Steph or Jackson. I can put him down to sleep. This is during the week. On the weekends, I really try to carve off full days. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, it really is. It's just there's just so much to do all the time. And, I try to put a really good team together around me so that I'm becoming much better at delegating. There's things that I just can't do anymore. I'm a complete type A. I like to micromanage all that stuff. I've given that all up. I don't micromanage at all now. I guess you could say I empower, which is you take care of this, right? And that's, I have to do that at this point. That's what I have to do.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Doug, is someone who say has business aspirations or academic aspirations or whatever, some other area of their life, and they also still want to be the best bodybuilder that they can be, what would you say to someone like that, and how would you advise them on keeping bodybuilding a priority?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I mean, it's, I just spoke about balance, but you got to realize that, at the end of the day, bodybuilding is not going to pay your bills. It's just a hobby, right? It really is. So you got to keep that in mind. You don't want to sacrifice a job. You don't want to sacrifice a relationship. You don't want to sacrifice the things that at the end of the day are going to be really important for bodybuilding. With that said, it also drives me crazy when people say they don't have time, right? You can make time. People waste so much time doing stupid stuff. Like if you're really into bodybuilding, it just means you're not watching any TV. Give up the 2 hours of TV at night that your average person is going to be watching, and find a way to make it happen. So what I've done, really a big part of what I do is like I really schedule in my workout, right? Like that's a part, I consider that part of my job, right? I mean, for me, really, it is kind of part of my job now. But if it's important to the people, and they have a flexibility that they can do it, they need to make that, schedule that in. If they don't have the flexibility, they got to look deeply and figure out kind of what is super important to them and what do they want to give up. If those things are giving up, a relationship or a job, then they really got to reconsider it. I don't know. I mean, even when I worked in the corporate world for 12 years, I did economic litigation consulting. It was a real priority because the bodybuilding really kind of kept the rest of my life together, right? Like that was my release. I was working 10, 12-hour days in the corporate world. Like I needed that release. And so that helped. I feel like that helped me be better at my relationships because I had that release. And right. The thing that I think a lot of people get caught up in is, especially younger bodybuilders, they feel like, and this was certainly me when I first started, let's say early 20s, every meal had to be hit spot on. If I missed a meal by 15 minutes, every 2.5 hours, if I wasn't eating, I was going to lose 5 pounds of muscle. Yeah. Right. And, if I didn't have my post-workout shake within 15 seconds of my last set, I would die. Right. And, the rigidity, right? I feel that causes more stress and is more detrimental to making progress and making gains than having a little bit more of a flexible approach and understanding, not sweating all those small stuff all the time. And I've worked with tons of people where, they were kind of being strangled by bodybuilding. Yeah. And once they loosened up, and for me, my loosening up was when I met Steph, actually. When you meet that girl, she'll make you loosen up a little bit, right? So she definitely did that for me. And I made more gains within the next year because I just was less rigid. I was less stressed about it. There was more important things in my life at that point, which was Steph, right? And so, kind of giving up on that rigidity, really can benefit people. I think people get too caught up in my macro. I missed a macro by, my macros were off 2 grams. I'm 2 grams over on fat today. I'm going to get fat tomorrow. So, just kind of loosen up a little bit. For the most part, 90-10, 80-20, something like that, keep it where it needs to be. But don't stress if something comes up and it takes you out of your bodybuilding role, right? That stress is going to be way worse off than the actual action of getting out of your routine. Yeah. So, I think that's really important, and I see it more with younger people for the most part. It was for me. I know in my early 20s, I was definitely that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was exactly the same way early in my career. It was all or nothing. And there was nothing in between. But yeah, no, that's great advice, Doug. And I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. I think you dropped a lot of knowledge bombs, and I find it personally motivating. I really do enjoy your style of training as well, and your approach to nutrition and everything. So I appreciate you sharing that all with us, and hopefully we can meet again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Thank you once again, and we'll see all you guys in the next episode.